Most people are other people. Their thoughts are someone else's opinions. Their lives, a mimicry. Their passions, a quotation. The truth is never pure and rarely simple. The greatest love is a mother's, then a dog's, then a sweetheart's. Be yourself. Everyone else is already taken. Man is many things, but he is not rational. Why was I born with such contemporaries? Everything in moderation, including moderation. The best way to appreciate your job is to imagine yourself without one. A man's face is his autobiography. A woman's face is her work of fiction. I have no objection to anyone's sex life, as long as they don't practice it in the street and frighten the horses. One's real life is often the life that one does not lead. Art is the most intense mode of individualism that the world has known. Everything in the world is about sex, except sex is about power. Anybody can make history. Only a great man can write it. I can resist everything except temptation. My own business always bores me to death. I prefer other people's. Arguments are to be avoided. They are always vulgar and often convincing. I can believe anything, provided that it is quite incredible. Morality is simply the attitude we adopt towards people we personally dislike. Whenever people agree with me, I always feel I must be wrong. Women love us for our defects. If we have enough of them, they will forgive us everything, even our intellects. Young men want to be faithful and are not. Old men want to be faithless and cannot. The final mystery is oneself. There is always something ridiculous about the emotions of people who one has ceased to love. Between men and women, there is no friendship possible. There is passion, enmity, worship, love, but no friendship. One is tempted to define man as a rational animal who always loses his temper when he is called upon to act in accordance with the dictates of reason. One should always play fairly when one has the winning cards. I never change, except in my affections. You can never be overdressed or overeducated. When the gods wish to punish us, they answer our prayers. The greatest thing in life is to live fearlessly. Life is not complex. We are complex. Life is simple, and the simple thing is the right thing. Music makes one feel so romantic. At least it always gets on one's nerves, which is the same thing nowadays. There are only two kinds of people who are really fascinating. People who know absolutely everything, and people who know absolutely nothing. Suffering is one very long moment. We cannot divide it by seasons. The only good thing to do with good advice is to pass it on. It is never of any use to oneself. It takes a great deal of courage to see the world in all its tainted glory, and still to love it. Life is far too important a thing ever to talk seriously about. Morality, like art, means drawing a line someplace. Man is least himself when he talks in his own person. Give him a mask, and he will tell you the truth. I love talking about nothing. It is the only thing I know anything about. A flower blossoms for its own joy. Every portrait that is painted with feeling is a portrait of the artist, not of the sitter. Sin is a thing that writes itself across a man's face. It cannot be concealed. Work is the curse of the drinking classes. Behind every exquisite thing that existed, there was something tragic. At twilight, nature is not without loveliness, though perhaps its chief use is to illustrate quotations from the poets. Starvation, and not sin, is the parent of modern crime. One should absorb the color of life, but one should never remember its details. Details are always vulgar. Genius is born, not paid. Hearts live by being wounded. We live in an age when unnecessary things are our only necessities. I like persons better than principles, and I like persons with no principles better than anything else in the world. To disagree with 3/4 of the British public is one of the first requisites of sanity. The only thing worse than being talked about is not being talked about. Always forgive your enemies. Nothing annoys them so much. Society exists only as a mental concept in the real world. It is only an auctioneer who can equally and impartially admire all schools of art. To recommend thrift to the poor is both grotesque and insulting. It is like advising a man who is starving to eat less. There is something terribly morbid in the modern sympathy with pain. One should sympathize with the color, the beauty, the joy of life. Crying is the refuge of plain women, but the ruin of pretty ones. Only the shallow know themselves. We teach people how to remember. We never teach them how to grow. In all matters of opinion, our adversaries are insane. If you want to tell people the truth, make them laugh. Otherwise, they'll kill you. I don't want to go to heaven. None of my friends are there. Most people die of a sort of creeping common sense and discover when it is too late that the only things one never regrets are one's mistakes. One can always be kind to people about whom one cares nothing. To love oneself is the beginning of a lifelong romance. The secret of life is to appreciate the pleasure of being terribly deceived. It is absurd to divide people into good and bad. People are either charming or tedious. An idea that is not dangerous is unworthy of being called an idea at all. Disobedience, in the eyes of anyone who has read history, is man's original virtue. It is through disobedience that progress has been made, through disobedience and through rebellion. Everybody who is incapable of learning has taken to teaching. The heart was made to be broken. It is always a silly thing to give advice, but to give good advice is fatal. To give an accurate description of what has never occurred is not merely the proper occupation of the historian, but the inalienable privilege of any man of parts and culture. A pessimist is somebody who complains about the noise when opportunity knocks. It is a very sad thing that nowadays there is so little useless information. I am sick to death of cleverness. Everybody is clever nowadays. All women become like their mothers. That is their tragedy. No man does. That is his.